I used to go to madrasa, so I used to learn Arabic, I used to learn the Quran. As I was embarking on my journey of exploring different faiths and different religions, at one point I felt so disconnected. I began to question and I began to doubt, does God even exist? I found Sanatan Dharma, and then from Sanatan Dharma, I spent many years living in a temple.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Dilip Amin, founder of InterfaithShaadi. Over the past 2 decades, I have guided some 1,300 youths in interfaith love relationships and have written 5 books on this subject. During my work, I have met many Hindus and Muslims who wrestle with the questions of faith, identity, spirituality, and relationships. Some have been drawn towards other religion because they found some aspect of them very compelling, while the other have rediscovered and deepened aspects of their own traditions. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Mahimarnava Prabhu, born and raised in Somalia, in predominantly Sunni Muslim environment. He later embarked on the profound spiritual journey that eventually led him to Krishna consciousness. His story raises an important questions about faith, freedom, spirituality, family, and search for truth. So without any further delay, welcome Mahimarnava Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Dilip Prabhu, for having me on your show, on your channel. And I'm really looking forward to embarking on this journey with you and with everyone that will be watching this, in the hope and the aspiration that people can become inspired and they can become educated and they can become empowered. So thank you once again for the opportunity to be able to share a little bit
Correct.
about my journey.
Inspired to do whatever they want to do as far they make fully informed decisions.
Precisely.
Yeah. So to start with uh, for the benefit of audience who have no clue about yourself, could you take maybe 5 or 10 minutes to describe your journey from your childhood in Somalia to where you are today? And in particular, definitely our focus is understanding the faith and spirituality. So please,
Mm.
thank you.
Yeah, what can I say? My journey began in Somali, but it later on began in the UK. Mm, to be honest, I didn't really have much of a very sort of a special history. I grew up in 1995 during the Civil War. And so me and my family, we migrated from Somali and we began traveling around different parts of Africa, East Africa. I had a very sort of a challenging upbringing when it came
Mm.
to settling down because my life as a young child was filled with constant travel, that it was very difficult for me to have stability, have foundation, have a sense of stillness in my life. And eventually, in the early 20s, 2000, we made our way to Europe. And then from Europe, we eventually came to England, to the UK. And I would say that I grew up because I was traveling a lot, because I was constantly faced with new conflicts, new challenges, new difficulties. So, therefore, those difficulties and challenges had made me very introspective. It had made me kind of withdrawn from material enjoyment, from material attraction, and it made me ask the big questions in life. So whilst many of my peers would play football, or they were more invested and interested in relationships, for me, I was more interested and invested in my relationship with God. For me, my questions were that what is the purpose of this world? What is the purpose of my existence? And where do we go after this world? So I had a lot of variety of questions that many young people probably wouldn't ask. And during that time, I also had quite different variety of paranormal activities, things that I've experienced, which made me just question things and made me doubt the model of the world that was given to me by school, by teachers, and even by families. And that was about it. So then I came into England, and those were the kind of questions I would be asking myself. And eventually, that inquisitiveness, that inquiry into purpose, into life. I remember once, I was holding my young brother, and as I was holding my young brother, embracing him with affection, this question came to my mind. And this question was that what will happen to us? In the sense that today we're spending time together, but where do we go on from here onwards? Because ultimately, one thing that I used to meditate on a lot growing up was death. I used to reflect
Wow.
and meditate on death a lot because part of our culture was that we would regularly visit funerals of different family members and different friends. So it made me it kind of really brought and grounded reality for me. And then those questions eventually led to me asking more questions. One thing that I'm really grateful for in my upbringing was that I was very much deeply rooted in my spiritual practice. So it wasn't a sort of a decision of deepening my faith from one faith to another faith, but rather what it is that I used to go to madrasa, so I used to learn Arabic, I used to learn the Quran, so and dhikr, all these kind of different practices. I really deepened my connection with them. And that is one thing that I'm truly and really grateful for in my upbringing, that, my parents really tried their best when it
Mhm.
came to making sure that I was disciplined in my spiritual practice. And I think that helped me immensely, particularly on my journey when it came to exploring different faiths. And so that's where it was. And then from there onwards, then I found Sanatana Dharma. And then from Sanatana Dharma, I spent many years living in a temple, a monastic life. And
Mhm.
eventually we're here now. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Hmm. Wow. So again, one interesting point remains that your switch, the one is in Islam, and you switch to uh, Hare Krishna consciousness. Now, both are, I see, is definitely very in a simplistic model, and also have a lot more strict guidance there. But at the same token, one major difference is that in Islam, as you know, that Allah is completely formless, and maybe completely outside the galaxies. Versus in Hinduism, it's a completely Krishna is round you. So formless to completely fully formed Hare Krishna. How did you uh, thought about these, or how your mindset changed
Thank
during
you so
your
much.
journey?
Thank you so much for asking that. I think one thing that we can perhaps maybe break down, and one thing that we can clarify is that, and it's something that many people have somewhat of a slight misunderstanding. Um, if we actually open the Quran, there are so many different verses that actually speaks about how Allah is not entirely wonderful.
Yeah.
Allah is not entirely formless.
Mm.
In fact, what it is that in the Quran, in different verses, you will find that Allah's glory is described as a personality that sits on a throne. There are different descriptions of how, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, ascended to the seventh heaven, as he ascended to the seventh heaven, what it is that there was a light, and he was unable to see the form of God. He was unable to see the form of Allah. In fact, the Quran even describes that, Allah's hand in our life, Allah's face is beautiful. In fact, it is described that people are created in the image of Allah. So what it is that there are so many different verses, there are so many different passage in the Quran that speaks about how Allah is not entirely formless. But when we do talk about how Allah is a formless, what the Sahabas, what the narrators of the Hadith and the companions of the Prophet and the Imams, what they're trying to relate is that Allah's form is inconceivable. It's inconceivable, and it's different from, you can say, our form, because God cannot be within his creation. Allah is outside of his creation. So if Allah is outside of his creation, then that must mean, yeah, that Allah created us, but his form is far more exalted than the form that we have. So the reason I'm kind of just relaying this is because what it is that the concept of Allah being completely formless is not entirely there. It's just that we're not allowed, or Muslims are not allowed, to conceive of a form of Allah. But with that being said, I think one of the things that really, for me, in my life, because I know a little bit about my love language, I know a little bit about what my needs are. And so for me, one of the things that I really yearned for in my spiritual journey was a relationship with God. It was a relationship. And it's very difficult to establish and to develop a relationship with a personality that you are not able to conceive of, that you're not able to see, that you're not able to experience. It's like using the analogy and an example of a lover and a loved. If a lover does not spend enough time seeing that person that he loves, eventually that love starts to begin to weaken. And we see that with many young people nowadays, they're spiritual but not religious. They have grown up in a certain religion with a certain rituals, with a certain kind of ways of performing things. But as they grow older and older and older, those more important question begins to arise. Because many young people nowadays, they're seeking for the same thing, including myself, which is love. And love is a matter that needs to be embraced. And if we're not able to embrace love, then what happens is that then that becomes replaced with doubt. And we see that nowadays in relationships, you begin to doubt, what is your partner after? What is your partner up to? If you don't see them enough yet, these kind of thoughts starts to creep in. And then that begins to distance the relationship. So many people, it's not that they don't believe in God, it's just that their relationship with God is somewhat impersonal. And so for me, as someone who was really deep and who was really committed to my spiritual practice, those were the questions that I began to wonder and contemplate on. What does God look like? How can I communicate with God? How can I connect with God? How can I share my problems, my challenges, and my difficulties with God?
Yeah, yeah.
And often, yes, I was told, okay, prayer is the way. Yes, prayer is the way, but ultimately also is being able to see. In Sanskrit, we have this terminology called darshan, vision,
Correct.
to be able to envision.
Mhm.
And then when you're able to envision, then that gives you the inspiration, that gives you the motivation, that gives you the nourishment that you need to be able to carry on. So for me, it just felt like, although I was very deep in my spiritual practice, in my religious practice, it just felt that sometimes I was walking on the journey alone.
Yeah.
And so I needed a companion.
Mhm.
And that's what I believe Sanatana Dharma and Krishna consciousness has really offered me, that God is not just a word. God is not just a person, a personality, an individual that is glancing on us from above the heaven.
Correct. Yeah.
And then there onwards making a judgment whether we deserve mercy or whether we deserve punishment and consequences. But rather, God's compassionate is so evasive. God's compassionate nature is so deep. In Islam, they call it Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, merciful, the most compassionate. But his compassion and his mercy is so evasive that he wants to get involved in our life. And so therefore, when I started to begin to realize that, when Krishna consciousness started and began to teach me this, then I felt no longer abandoned. I no longer felt disconnected. I no longer felt that God was just an entity that was separate from me, separate from this universe while I was struggling in this world, but was an entity that truly and really wanted to help me, guide me, and elevate me back to Him.
Beautifully. I clearly understand the point that, again, I've never practiced Islam, but that when Allah is a formless and you don't see anything,
Mm,
and you need some focus point for
mm.
anything. And naturally, you have the Kaaba, and I look at the Kaaba and all that. But still, in Krishna consciousness, I mean, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Lord Krishna is right with you in your
Mm.
everything what you are. And he dance with you, he talks to you, he eats with you, you feed him, you give him bath, and it's like a companion.
I
And
think, yeah.
that's way some people I see they really love it. So
Mm.
yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think it's like it's interesting because what it is that you can say the imams, the scholars of Islam, is not that they entirely deny the presence and the form of God, but what it is that in in Arabic you call it shirk.
Mm-hmm.
To
Shirk,
be
yeah,
like to
shirk.
conceive, to perceive that God has a companion, that God has a form. It's just basically something that is unheard of. It's something that cannot be conceived. So therefore, the closest things that the imams attempt and they try to do, which is similar to Krishna consciousness, to Sanatana Dharma, is that when they speak about God's hand, when they speak about God's face, rather than using literal terminology that God has a hand, God has a face, they try and kind of use it in a metaphorical sense. Like, God's hand is meant to represent the power that He has over His creation. God's face is meant to represent the beauty that is inconceivable to each and every one of us with our sight. God's throne is meant to represent majestic glory. So, and it's similar to Krishna consciousness when we speak about the Vishvarup, when we speak about how the different forms of the Lord's body represents the mountain, the sun, the moon, the stars. And for some people it works, but for me it was very difficult
Yeah,
because I needed
correct.
to be able to, glance, like to be able to have a relationship with God. And that's why, what did Arjun say? Arjun said to Krishna that please, stop showing me your Vishvarup. I want to see your beautiful Shama Sundar form. I want to see the beautiful form of you. So then, therefore, I can continue this beautiful relationship of friendship with you. So it's similar, that what it is that in many faiths, is especially when I was practicing Islam, the whole kind of angle was more from awe and reverence. But awe and reverence relationship is very difficult to sustain and maintain. And that's
Yeah.
the beauty, Madhurya Ras, that kind of sweetness that you can actually have a relationship with God.
I was talking to someone Hindu who got interested into Islam and was
Mm,
following it, and I said, "Explain me Islam." And we came to yes, both are omnipotent. Both have the theologically God is omnipotent.
mm,
On the point of omnipresent, uh, what is it? As I understood that the Allah is outside the billions of galaxy creation, just like you said, creation and
mm,
creator, creator
mm,
and creations cannot be one and same or close by. They are away. So I say, if God created us way out in galaxies and will come see us only on the judgment day, it's
mm,
like a landlord model. And you lease an apartment from a landlord, a
mm,
flat from landlord. So you have he's a creator. We use that creation, and then according to Western laws, landlord cannot enter your apartment because
mm,
we own it. We paid the lease. It's only when we leave the lease, when we get done, landlord comes and civilly punishes if we did not follow it.
yeah.
So versus the Hinduism I see is some more a parental model where parent created you, and then let's say you start to living on your own, and still parents comes and live with you. They demand, they cannot, you cannot get rid of. They want to be part of you. So one is, but again, counter argument on that one is that in Islam again it says God is not billions of galaxies away. It's he's also on your jugular vein.
Mm,
So yes, they try to explain on one side that the creation and creators are completely separate, but then they also keep on saying that no, no, it is still connected to creators. But
mm,
I guess instead of those doubles say no, no, it is not or it is. I mean, Hinduism it's plain and simple. Creator and creators are one and same. Everything, you are the ultimate. I am the ultimate. Everybody are ultimate. And my soul, my Atma, inner ultimate, bows to your inner ultimate, and that's
mm,
Namaste. So
mm,
yes, Hinduism and Islam has a, when it comes to the omnipresent, Hinduism and Islam are way on two different extremes.
mm. One of the most beautiful thing was that every morning I would wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning. And then after that, what it is that I would do the ablution. And then when I would do the ablution, then I would pray. In fact, in Islam, there's many hadiths
Mhm.
that basically explains and describes that during near the end of the night, like you can say early mornings around 4 a.m., the Brahma Murti time, Allah ascends from the seventh heaven
Mhm.
all the way down to the nearest of the heaven that is closest to earth. And then there he basically asks, what is it that my servant is calling me for?
Mhm.
What is my servant calling me for? So what it is that in one sense you are correct. That what it is that what Sanatana Dharma offers, what Sanatana Dharma presents, is that the relationship that we have with God, God is within his creation and outside of his creation at the same time. Krishna is within his creation and outside of his creation. Not only is Krishna within his creation, Krishna is so near and so close to us that he is in our heart as
Yeah.
Paramatma, and he is guiding us back to him. Um, and that was so beautiful because the thing was that one thing that I haven't shared in the past is that as I was embarking on my journey of exploring different faiths and different religions, at one point I felt so disconnected from faith. I felt so disconnected from religion, particularly in those phases of my life when I was homeless. I felt so disconnected. At one point, I began to question and I began to doubt, does God even exist?
Yeah.
Because for a very long time, this is what we're taught. We're taught that God, Allah, is separate from his creation.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we're simultaneously taught that if you do dhikr, if you try and chant Allah's name, Allah has 99 different names. If you chant these names, that in that remembrance, you will be able to feel his presence.
Mhm.
And that's beautiful. But at the same time, for me, it was a struggle. It was a very
Yeah.
much a huge struggle because for me, it's like there was more comfort in the sense that Krishna is as Paramatma, God is a Paramatma within our heart, and He is guiding each and every one of us back to Him. And He is always that whispering voice that is telling us what to avoid and what to engage with.
Mhm.
Yeah, so both of them are really sweet, very beautiful. But for me, like I was saying also, and as you were mentioning, that there's a beauty when God is within his creation because you begin to feel that God does care about me.
Yeah.
Krishna cares about me enough that he is willing to enter into his creation, or that he is willing to enter into my heart, so therefore that he's able to guide me back to him. Just the same way a child growing up will
Yeah.
feel more love and more care when the mother and father are around, rather than the mother and the father maybe trying to guide him through a phone call.
Yeah. Correct. Correct.
The
Good point.
child will be like, where is my mother? Where is my father? So that is the beauty of Krishna consciousness, that, or Sanatana Dharma, for me personally speaking, that it communicated to me this sense and this feeling of care and concern. And it's beautiful how in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is described as the seed-giving father, that he is ultimately the father for each and every one of us. And we're all just lost children in this world that are trying to reconnect with the father.
No, I think it's beautiful. It makes it, it's just plain and simple, like you said, that if God is right there next to you, walks with you, talk with you, it's just a more comforting model versus the other one. It works for people, wonderful, but sometimes it could be may not work for others.
I think also one thing I want to add to that is thank you so much for sharing that. One thing I also want to add to that is I guess this is one of the biggest issue in our modern day society, because our relationship with God, with Allah, Krishna, whatever one may want to describe it, um, feels impersonal. So therefore, what it is that our behavior also becomes self-destructive. Because when
Mm,
you take the essence out of anything, then it becomes meaningless. So if you take the personal form out of God, then what happens is that our relationship and our sort of interaction with God becomes a fearing one. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're able to act upon the best version of ourselves
correct.
gradually. So what it is that also when you like it's the same way like just like as your when your mother and father are in a room, you're more likely to be sensitive, to be cautious, to be careful. But when what it is that you know you claim to believe in God, but you deny that there is a form to God, that there is some essence to God, then what happens? It becomes a very impersonal relationship. But
Yeah.
that impersonal relationship impacts and affects our relationship with humanity, our relationship with the planet, our relationship with just everything and anyone around us. The analogy that is used here is that if we're able to have a form of God and we're able to direct our love towards that form of God, then what happens? It's like a diamond with a beam, and then that beam just shines on everything. So
Correct.
when we're able to have a pure and unconditional loving relationship with God, then we're able to have a pure and unconditional loving relationship with everyone and anything else. But if our relationship with God, with Allah or Krishna, is a fearful one, then what happens is that we live our life in a very fearful way. We live our life in a very restrained way. And so then, therefore, we struggle to truly and really embrace our own individuality. And then, when we see others who are embracing their individuality, what happens is that we look down upon them and we criticize them and we put them down.
That's a very important point. In your video, I noticed that one theme that stood out in your interview, the prior interview, and I
Mm,
have put the link below, that your spiritual life is no longer driven primarily by fear, but by
mm,
inspiration and love.
mm.
So could you elaborate more on that one? Why it was primarily by fear earlier, and how that your relationship with God and spirituality changed?
Mm. There's a beautiful quote that says, "Tell a lie long enough, it becomes a truth.
Yeah.
And then preach that truth loud and long enough, it becomes a culture. And then that culture is carried on from generation to generation that it becomes a tradition." Nowadays, what it is that we put so much emphasis into the fear aspect of God. And that gets carried on from generations to generations to generations that we no longer even bother to question. That is God really as fearful as people have made out for him to be? Is God really just this wrathful, angry, jealous, judgmental personality that is just waiting for anyone that crosses the boundary and the line? And if we begin to question long enough, we realize that what often happens is that that's not the case. We project our own doubts, we project our own insecurity, we project our own feelings. And often what happens is that when we read scriptures from an element of as we are and not as it is. Because what it is that there's evidence both in the Quran and there's also evidence both in the Gita that God is there for his believers. God is there for his followers. Allah is there for his followers and his believers in a loving way. Just like Krishna, I use Krishna and Allah even though it's just the same thing, it's
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Mhm.
Just like Krishna, we see with Arjun, we see with the Pandavas, we see with Queen Kunti, we see with Draupadi that he's there
Mhm.
in protecting his devotees, and this can only be a symptom of love.
Yeah.
So when we actually begin, and so that's what happened for me. What it was is that Srila Prabhupada says there that we have to learn to be introspective
Mhm.
rather than speculating, rather than assuming, rather than presuming. We cut violence, because violence is just an equation of ignorance.
Mhm.
Fear is only a symptom of ignorance. You only fear what you don't know. If
Yeah.
you're fully aware of something, if you're fully conscious of something, then you realize that actually God has a very sweet and loving nature. And so for me, it was that whatever was told to me, I would always get into this habit of questioning it. Is this really correct? Is this
Mhm.
really true? And I think one thing that we must learn to avoid is don't allow fear to overshadow your intelligence.
True.
Don't
Very
allow
true.
fear to overshadow your inquisitiveness. In the Quran, one of the first verse that was revealed to the Prophet was Iqra, which means read. Read in the name of your Lord. So it means be inquisitive, seek knowledge, acquire knowledge. In fact, even the hadith, one of the hadith, the Prophet said, yeah, that actually it is the duty of every single Muslim to inquire on the path back to paradise.
Mhm.
And so, similarly, in Krishna consciousness, it also teaches along the same line. And by the way, most of these references that I'm using from the hadiths is from Sahih al-Muslim. And then in Krishna consciousness, when I started embracing Sanatana Dharma, it's also along the same line, where Srila Prabhupada tells us, where in fact the whole Bhagavad Gita is an inquisitiveness, is a question, where Krishna is asking all these questions, where Arjuna is asking all these questions to Krishna, and Krishna is answering it. And so, therefore, what it is that in the beginning I was fearful, but as I started to ask questions, that fear started to transform into adventure, into curiosity,
Mhm.
into just this deep yearning that I wanted to understand the truth and I wanted to connect with the truth beyond what has been informed to me, beyond my upbringing, beyond culture.
Mhm.
And so, therefore, eventually I started to realize that God is actually a very loving personality. God is so loving. It's so interesting when the devotees, when the Krishna consciousness devotees, they talk about it. They say that Krishna's heart melts so much when he sees his devotees are struggling and suffering, and he wants them. So it's like these adjectives, these passages of statements is beautiful. It's beautiful because what it shows is that you know God has the ability to possess love, and He is
Yep.
loving, and His love overshadows His anger.
Yeah.
It overshadows, like, yeah, His anger. That's all I can say. So it's beautiful. So for me, it was like in the beginning, it was difficult, but then as I kind of continued to transition, I started to realize that what is there truly for me to fear? Because if God loves me so much, then God would
Yep.
naturally want me to be inquisitive, would want me to find out more about His nature. Allah would want me to find out more about His nature, about who He is. And then, so therefore, what it is that when people ask me, have I changed my religion? I haven't necessarily changed my religion as such. I've just deepened my relationship with God. Whether one may want to call that God Allah, or whether one may want to call that God Krishna, I've deepened my relationship with God.
It's beautiful. I love it that you did not change your religion. You did
No,
not
you
change
can't.
the
In
God.
Sanatana Dharma, there's no such thing as conversion. You
Yeah,
cannot convert into any religion. You are only able to deepen your relationship with God.
you are just enlightened now. You
Hmm.
know more who you are now.
And so, therefore, what it is that with that being said, I think one thing that Sanatana Dharma also offered me is the opportunity to have a balanced vision. One of our teachers, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he has this beautiful saying that, he said that when I go to a different place of worship, and I see people worshiping to different gods, whether it's Allah, whether it's Jehovah, whatever it may be. All I'm seeing is that that person is worshiping and praying to the same God as I am, but they're praying to that same God in a different way that I may not be able to understand it. And just
Correct.
because I don't understand it, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. And if I assume that it's right and wrong, then that comes purely based on my ignorance
Correct.
and not based on what they're doing. And I think we have to kind of really get to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that so much violence under the label, under the title of religion, comes from ignorance. It's not religion. Most of our conflict in the world, most of our dispute and disagreement comes from ignorance. Because if a Muslim takes time to understand Krishna consciousness, then they would realize that, wow, there's so much similarities. If a Krishna consciousness devotee takes time to listen and understand a Muslim, then they would realize, wow, it's still the same God. It's just different labels that we're all conflicted and we're fighting, we're disputing over.
My childhood has been exactly probably opposite than yours. Naturally, I mean, we had extreme poverty. I mean, if I start talking about my poverties,
Mm,
then people will start feeling pain about it. But at the same token, I never had fear. And
mm,
absolutely, my development was completely in Hindu 100% Hindu philosophies, and I see God everywhere. Even some little tulsi plants, I will bow to it. If I see
mm,
cow, even though I have a half roti, I give it quarter to the cow. I see my mother always go and water the tulsi, this people tree. I mean, animals, plants, everybody, they were just treated like a godly. And
mm,
fear, I don't know, my parents never taught me anything. You just keep on doing your things. So fear
mm,
was never part of my life. I just keep on doing, keep on
mm.
doing. And,
Beautiful.
in that case, advantage is I had nothing. I got my PhD, work in corporate life for 42 years. You can achieve so much because you're not wasting your energy after fear. You're just putting your energy towards something creating positive for
Yes.
without having negative energy. And just like you said, I don't think negative about Muslims and I don't think those Christians are bad because it takes away energy from you. And instead of
Mm.
that, if you just put it positively, you can create so much better for yourself, for others, everything.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely. I think, our society is suffering from one of the biggest disease in modern day times and even in the past, which is comparison. Is
Mm.
one of the biggest disease of the world today, and in the name of being right, we do so much harm to each other. And now tell me, like, people may kind of extract certain verses from the Quran, just like people may extract certain verses from the Gita. And they may say that, our faith is teaching us to fight for the truth. But actually, what it is that we're so blinded by our own sort of pride. We're so blinded
Mm.
by so much ignorance because actually, both the Quran and the Gita, if you look at it, it's not calling for us to go and fight others because they're different from us. This is what it is that it's self agenda. This is what people want to do. This is not what faith is obliging people to do. Now, one may say that, oh, but how could you say that? In the Quran, it says it like, oh, fight against
Yeah, 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 yeah.
polytheism and do this and do that. But actually, if you actually really carefully analyze it, um, everything has to really be taken into consideration when it comes to context. And I've mentioned this in one of my previous interview that if you look carefully enough, the Quran was revealed not in a chronological order, but it was revealed according to time, place, and circumstances.
Yeah.
Different verses were becoming revealed to the Prophet to instruct him to do certain things. Now, there is generic rules and laws, and there's specific rules and laws. And so, therefore, what it is that in the Quran, there's even specific verses which says here that there is no compulsion to religion, that you
Yeah.
can peacefully live side by side with another person from another religion without having to, feel this need to try and convert them to your religion. Just like in Sanatana Dharma, we say that there is no conversion, that ultimately everyone is on their journey back to Krishna. That's why Krishna came as Lord Buddha, so that in order to be able to ultimately bring everyone back to him. So Krishna is amazing. Krishna is so beautiful, because what it is that God connects with people according to different time, place, and circumstances to ultimately bring humanity back to him. And so our responsibility is to discern, is to discriminate between what is a rule and a law for us and what is a rule and a law that needed to be executed at that time. And for that to happen, what we need to do is we need to put aside our own agenda. We need to put aside our own sort of desire, our own pride, and we need to live our life in a very unconditionally loving and selfless way.
Great point. Even for Hindu youths who are listening this one, and definitely non-Hindus, one point is we need to clarify. When you say Krishna, Krishna,
Mm,
many, even Hindus, they end up, oh, Krishna with Murali and all that.
yeah.
True, very true. But there is other Krishna too. This you meant, or you please clarify. Is it that
Mm.
particular one form, one time stories what you hear that's limiting Krishna? You think talking about, or are you talking about the ultimate?
In our scripture, it says that, because when we talk in our scripture, it says that Krishna is one, and Krishna is an
Yeah, correct.
individual. Krishna is, Srila Prabhupada puts it beautifully, that what it is that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead.
Hmm.
So there's only one God. Most people confuse us for a polytheistic religion, polytheism religion, that we seem to think that we worship so many different things. But rather, what it is that God is one, and God has different expansions, different incarnations. And we respect those different incarnations and expansions. Just as one may love his mother and father, or her mother and father, but then that same person also respects his aunties, his uncles, his brothers, and his sisters. Just like in a company, ultimately you have one boss, one CEO, but then underneath that one CEO, there may be different individuals that run different part of the company. And due to their responsibility, we respect them. Otherwise, the company wouldn't be able to function. So this
Correct.
planet, this world would not be able to function without all that different personalities that have been appointed, like the Mahavishnu, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to kind of govern different departments of that creation. So Krishna is one, because the moment that we say, and yes, Krishna is one, but simultaneously, Krishna is in everything.
Correct.
But there's only one supreme personality of Godhead, and that one supreme personality's Godhead energy evades everything in the universe, in the creation. But the moment what happens is that we start to begin to relay as Krishna is just everything, then we neglect the personal form of the Lord.
Mm,
Just like, I have a name, and yeah, that name is me, but also I'm an individual.
mm,
I'm not that, a name is a part of me, but I'm also an individual.
yeah, yeah.
But the moment that you just take my name for me and you forget this individual, then I feel neglected. So similarly, Krishna is one. He's an individual. He is being, but his entire form is made of spirit. Our form is made of water, fire, ether, air, and all these kind of different earthly elements, this material elements. But his form is purely spiritual, and he is in
This is a
and he is in
very,
Goloka, and he is in Goloka Vrindavan. But simultaneously, he's also omnipotent.
so even Hindus get confused, youths get confused that when they talk about Krishna, or you talk about Krishna, they immediately get stuck with one particular form, one
Mm,
limiting particular historical figure,
mm,
and they need to realize that he's just omnipresent everywhere there. And as soon as you start limiting the scope of the ultimate, in a way you are insulting the ultimate. So just open up the scope all over, including one small form to all form. It's all we're talking
mm.
about, all one.
Yeah, that's why, in the Bhagavad Gita, we speak about the Vishvaroot form.
Mhm.
Yeah, ultimately, God has a form in which, everything is connected to Him. Krishna, everything is connected to Krishna. But then for devotees, for Hare Krishnas, for Krishna consciousness devotees, they're not interested in the Vishvaroot form. They're not interested in that form in which God is just everything. They're more interested in that specific form in which they can build a relationship with.
Nope, that is great. Uh, that revisiting the question of the fear. My reading of I read the uh, Bible, and I realized the second commandment of the Ten Commandment. It says, "I'm the jealous God, and if you don't follow me, I will punish you to 3 to 4 generations."
Mm,
And there were many other fearful statements in Bible there. That second commandment is from Torah, and then Bible introduced a lot more fearful commandments. And I noticed
mm,
the reading the Quran. Yes, it's every page you will keep on seeing more fearful statements that if you do these things, I will punish you, but God is merciful. So God is merciful, and immediately severe statements that I will cut right hand and left foot, and so much glory detail how severely I will punish you. My reading, and also I have Islamic experts and discuss with them. So I mean, I understood that it's said God cannot be merciful, and also cutting your right and left foot. And but when some naive person reads it and reads few chapters of it, Quran, I mean, they will get scared away. So again, in Hinduism, also people will say Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are built on wars, and there has to be some fear. For example, in America, if he says America, there is no fear, even though there is a full liberty. But I don't have a daring going through the traffic light because I'm fearful that police will catch me. So there has to be some level of fear, which is important. But fear don't have to encompass us too much, and then you lose the beauty of this world.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's similar when we open the Bhagavad Gita. I think it was chapter 18, correct me if I'm wrong, where basically Krishna says that um, always worship me, think of me, um, always think of me, worship me, become my devotee.
Mhm.
And if you do so, then you will be free from all sinful reactions. That I guarantee you, because you are my dearest friend, my very dear friend. He says that to Arjun. And
Mhm.
so one may also read that particular verse and may also think that, like, wow, Krishna sounds like a very possessive God personality. So what it is that, again, it really comes down to our own, like what Srila Prabhupada says, that we must use our intelligence to surrender, not that we surrender our intelligence.
Good point.
And so what it is that, so if what Krishna is doing, and similarly, what I like to believe here, what the Quran also does here, is that it presents sort of different statements. In one element, you're exposed to the loving nature of God. In another element, you're presented with like the fear aspect of God. Our responsibility and our duty, each and every one of us, is not to become possessed over one, that we forget the others. We have to be mindful in this world. We have to be careful in this world. So sometimes what it is that God may use harsh words.
Mhm.
But rather than being locked on those harsh words, we can take it as a warning
Mhm.
while simultaneously trying to develop a loving relationship with God. So that's my take. My take is that often what happens is that we become so succumbed, we become so obsessed with one element and one angle of what's being presented to us that we neglect
Yeah.
the other aspect of it. And so, therefore, what they say is that your thoughts, if you keep meditating on the same thing again and again and again, influences your feeling. And that's
Mm.
why most people find God to be a very fearful rather than loving. So your thoughts influences your feelings. Then your feelings influences your action.
Yeah.
Therefore, most people, they kind of shut away. There's either two things. They either shut away or they become destructive. Your actions influences your habit. Now you
Mm.
naturally have a certain assumption about God, and you have a natural assumption of what should happen. Your actions, your habits, then influences your identity, which influences your destiny. So I think what it is that we have to be very cautious and we have to be very conscious when we're reading scriptures of what is it that we're possessing, what is it that we're obsessing about. And we have to be
Mm.
very careful of what we extract and what we take from. Because again, what it is that we then have Sufi Islam. And in the
Mm.
Sufi Islam, it really kind of describes and it explains and talks more about the loving element of Allah rather than just the pure fear of Allah. So
Good.
there's a spiritual element. And so often what happens, what I've noticed is that in Islam, things can become so ritualistic that we forget the heart, we forget the spiritual aspect of it, we forget the essence of it.
Mm.
And so that is something that each and every one of us have to do our diligence practice, and we have to do our diligence sort of questioning and reasoning, and make sure that we make the right decision.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, what it is that I'm sure uh, that Allah is not as Allah is not more concerned about being seen as a fearing God, rather than more concerned about being experienced as a loving God.
One other point I want to touch on, and I have seen a really big difference between Hinduism and Islam, is the exclusivity, supremacist ideology.
Mm,
And that is, and I work in interfaith love relationships, and Hindus and Muslim get in love. One is absolutely pluralist. Everybody, yes, if somebody says, Christian guy says, "Oh, can you accept Jesus?" Hindu says, "Yeah, sure, problem. You'll have to get baptized." Hindu says, "No problem, I'll get baptized." What Hindu does not, party does not realize that you are baptizing or you are taking Sahadat. You're not accepting Allah. You're not accepting Jesus, but you are giving up all others one. I mean, in
mm,
theologically, it's all same, but your church and the pastors and this imam may have a different concept for you. And
mm,
that's why everything goes good in the early love relationships, because Hindus, yes, yes, I will accept everything. And Mosley says, take mine, this one, and they says, yeah, we'll do it. But then conflict comes later on. And so the exclusivist mindset, and I've seen all over all Muslims, I mean, they will come out and adamantly tell you that there is only one truth, and there is only one
mm,
truth, and nothing but truth. And Islam is, the Quran is telling everything 100%, nothing out of, you cannot even put one stop, take away one foot stop, I mean, one even dot away from this book or add
mm,
to it, because that's a final message. Then why there are so many other religions there? And
mm,
they will not settle, and that in a way that creates a lot of conflicts, because there is only truth, and that's my truth. There is only
mm,
one God, and that's my God. Your gods are useless, or you must give up all those things.
mm,
So versus in I guess in Krishna conscious, you learn that you don't have to give up Allah. You don't have to give up saying you are, use the word of Allah anymore.
mm. Yeah, like the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he said that it is the duty and the responsibility of each Muslim, to seek knowledge. Just like Allah in the Quran also says here that we've created this entire world. So then, therefore, that each Muslim should actually reflect on it, think on it, and try
Mm,
to come to an understanding of His glory.
mm,
But what it is that when it comes to exploration, when it comes to discovery in Islam, what it is that there's a framework, and
mm,
like you were mentioning, and it's very difficult to come out of that framework. Not difficult that, but it's recommended and it's suggested that you don't come out of that framework. So, for example, we're not allowed. Muslims are not allowed to question. Um, about the form of God, like we were mentioning earlier on. Muslims are not allowed to question the decisions of God, the actions of God. They can question and they can inquire about creation, but not the activity of what's going on behind the scene. But the beauty of what I was able to really embrace as a Sanatan Dharmi, as a Bhakti yogi, is that we can ask all kind of questions.
yeah. Why not?
It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
whether it's about the creation or whether it's about the creator. Because ultimately, what it is that how can we unconditionally give our heart to the Supreme Lord if we have doubts?
Correct.
So, doubts are good and doubts need to be addressed. But then through that doubt, we should develop clarity and we should develop trust, absolute trust and clarity. And for that to happen, sometimes we do have to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Krishna,
Yeah.
what are you really doing?
Yeah.
Krishna, why is this happening?
Yeah.
And so that was really the beauty, because what it is that the more questions we can ask, then the more we can get to the essence. But if there's a
Mm,
hesitance of asking questions because it's not within the framework of what's permitted, then those questions, what happens is that we may delay them, we might divert our attention from them, but they grow more and more and more and more until it becomes uncontrollable. And so for me, I guess what it is that I had those questions, but I didn't really know who to ask. And eventually that journey led me to embarking on my spiritual journey.
no, beautiful. The Judgment Day concept is that you will wait in the grave and the Allah will come. And I mean, I have noticed that Muslims are really so fearful or so conscious of the Judgment Day that if they did not act right, ultimately Allah will punish them. And
Mm.
so, yeah, fear becomes so much factored in all the time. And when I discuss to them, guy like me who has never, fear concept never was in my mind all the time. What is there to be
Yeah.
fearful about? If that is the ultimate billions, the one who is controlling or who has made the billions of galaxies so powerful, what do God care? What do I mean, meaning why God will be fearful of or will get angry at what I do it. It will, it
Mm.
has to be loving to me. That's it. That's the way I look at it. Versus, I notice that many Muslims end up being in that fear mode, like what you mentioned.
Mm. When our whole life depends on one moment, whether we get judged, whether we go to heaven or hell, it
Yeah,
naturally creates anxiety.
yeah.
It naturally creates fear. It naturally creates somewhat of a rebellious kind of element to us that we don't want to openly express. So we try and hide it deep within ourselves. But I had a different take on it.
Mhm,
My take on it was that in Sanatana Dharma, we understand the concept of samsara, that there
mhm.
is a reincarnation, that God is so compassionate and so merciful that He's given us chances, life after life after life, until we perfect our life and then we eventually return back to Him. In Islam, the concept of reincarnation doesn't exist. You have one opportunity, one life, one chance. And so this life dictates whether you go to heaven or hell. But I had a very different take on that. And my take on it was that whilst many Muslims are waiting whether they'll find out whether they'll go to heaven or hell, there's a similar experience in this world. Heaven and hell is not just a concept in which when you die, you'll go to heaven or hell. Your choices and your decisions can also give you a glimpse experience of what heaven and hell is based on how you live in this earthly world. So
Right now.
yeah, right now.
Right now. That's the point. Yeah.
So each and every day we're experiencing either the glory of God or we're experiencing the repercussions for turning away from God.
Mhm.
And that is heaven and hell. And so if we meditate upon it in that way, then we realize that it's not something we have to wait. It's not something that we have to rush to. Like, oh my God, I hope I die as soon as possible so then I can go to heaven. Or, oh my God, I have to avoid hell. It's something that you can consciously meditate on every single day of your life. And the more you meditate on it, the more sensitive and conscious and aware you can become. But I guess for me, what it is that the beauty is understanding in the fact that life is not just you have one shot and that's it,
Mhm.
but rather that we're coming into this creation life after life after life. Now, some people may say that they disagree with that and they argue with that. But you see, we have a very famous researcher whose name is Ian Stevenson.
Mhm.
Ian Stevenson went around to 200 families and he started asking those young children from these families if you actually remember your past life. All of these children, they started sharing with Ian Stevenson who their parents were in their past life, where they used to live, how they were murdered or how they died, what accidents they had. And Ian
Mhm.
Stevenson, he started doing this research. And like, for example, one girl may say, yeah, that I used to live in this place. And then in this place, yeah, there was this kind of mark here, or there was this going on. And so Ian Stevenson, he did this research. And then what he found out was actually all of these children's, everything that they shared about their past life was correct. So this shows that the soul is actually traveling from one body to another,
Mhm.
from one experience of life to another.
Mhm.
Now, if that doesn't surprise us, another thing that for me made sense is that how is it that some children are born into this world and they're able to speak in a language that they've never been exposed to,
Yeah.
or they're able to remember, like, they're able to speak a language, or they have a gift that they've never really cultivated through studying or through learning. It just naturally came. We call it a children's gift, gifted children.
Mhm.
These are not coincidence, deja vu. These are not coincidence that you've been somewhere and you feel like you remember it even though you've never been there before. These all leads to the fact that the concept of reincarnation has been around since time immemorial. That is real. That we're genuinely traveling from one life to another life. Like I just went to India recently, and I've never really deeply explored India. But then as I was going to the Ganga, I was going to like the different places, the Jalangi River. I was going to these different places. I was like, I feel like I've been here before.
Wow.
And I was like, but I've never actually been to India in this life. But I feel like I've been here before. I visited here
Wow.
before.
Uh-huh.
So these are not coincidence.
Hmm.
These explains that there's a deep science. And so for me, that kind of makes more sense. God, Krishna, Allah, whatever one may want to call it, is not this wrathful person that he gives us one chance. And if we don't make it in one chance, that's it. Finito. Game over. But rather, God is so compassionate that He is waiting for us life after life after life until one day the light bulb switches on. We wake up and we realize that I am an eternal servant of the Lord and that
Mhm.
I'm here to serve and I'm here to rekindle and reconnect my loving relationship with Him.
Your point, what you made, one life versus multiple lives, reincarnations. One Hindu youth who is impressed with Islam, I was conversing, and he made a reverse statement. He says, in Islam, you follow Allah in one life, you go to heaven. Versus in Hinduism, you have to go through so many incarnations. I said, wait, you are missing out. You will be sitting in that grey box on the judgment day, and you will be sitting till for the judgment day. And who knows, judgment day might come after billion years. So you will have to keep waiting in that grey box for billions of years. Versus in Hinduism, you keep on reincarnating, keep on coming back to this earth. So what do you prefer, waiting in the grey box or coming? So point is, it's the same, like you beautifully described the incarnation concept. Some Hindus took it a wrong way and they got impressed with Islamic one chance, and it's a easy fix. Islam is a easy fix. That's what has been convinced by many other Hindus are convinced by, impressed by Muslims, saying that Islam is a very easy fix. Simple thing, you follow these things, and zoom, you will be in heaven.
They say that simple things becomes difficult to perform without the remembrance of God, and difficult things becomes easier to perform with the remembrance of God.
Beautiful.
So my question is that, yes, in one life you can make it back to Allah, you can make it back to Jannah, back to paradise. But the question is, how easy is it to really remember God? How easy is it? We're filled with so much distractions. We call it Kali Yuga, the age of hypocrisy and quarrel. And in this day and age, we're not just struggling with a destructive force like the atomic bomb, but we're struggling with destructive force like the Wi-Fi, the network, internet, our phone, banners, boards, and all these things around us that constantly distracts us from the goal of life. Nowadays, enjoyment is made to feel right, while being religious is made to feel wrong.
Very
You
true.
practice your faith and you're told that you're too much of an extremist. You
Mhm.
don't practice any faith and you're told that you're living the free life.
Yeah.
So my thing is that in one life, we may be able to achieve Allah, but is it really that easy? Because at the time of death, we may think that we're able to remember Allah, but it's not that easy. I remember when I saw my friend who was dying from cancer. And I remember the pain, the struggle, your neurons, they begin to shut down. Your ability to think straight begins to shut down. And then what happens is that all of your senses are withdrawing. And your ability to think, your ability to feel, your ability to focus goes away. So it may sound easy to remember Allah, but at the time of death, naturally, most of us will remember our family first. We may remember our family, we may remember our friends, we may remember all these kind of different things that kind of then distracts us from what the purpose of this existence, what the purpose of this world was ultimately all really about. Now, that's from a reincarnation point of view. But even if we just kind of put the reincarnation aspect aside, and we may say that it's easy to remember Allah, it's easy in this one life to live a perfect life and ultimately return back to God. What it is that most of us, we're naturally drawn to peer pressure.
Mhm.
We're naturally drawn to influences and temptations. And so, although it may be easy, the reality is that most of us, we're trying to fit in with a community. We're trying to
Mhm.
fit into the world. And sometimes what happens is that in the process of trying to fit in the world, um, we may compromise things. Krishna consciousness describes this element of the gunas, sattva guna, tamas guna, and rajas guna.
Yeah.
That what it is that none of us are prone. Prakriti kriyamanane gune karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kataham itimanyate. None of us are actually prone to the influence of this world. We're all governed by either passion, ignorance, and goodness. And so therefore, the beauty of Krishna consciousness is that it tells us that if you don't make it in this life, don't worry. You don't start from again. You don't start from scratch. Nor will you nor are you doomed, but you'll be able to carry on from where you left off. So you have a second chance, third chance, fourth chance. But what
Mhm.
it is that in Abrahamic faiths, you have this chance.
Yep.
And if you make a mistake, then that's it.
You're doomed.
And I guess what it is that in one sense, it creates obedience, but obedience without questioning, obedience without exploring, obedience without discovery becomes self destructive.
Beautiful, beautiful. So much to learn from you, Prabhu. Really honor. Again, I know it's your views, but let me share my views. How my life has gone through.
Sure.
I'm 874, perfect health, and as I said, started from extreme poverties. Now I have, so much in life. But one thing remains same. I never had fear, even though I did not had any material. I had to walk to my school some 4 miles, heavy rain. I did not have plastic to cover my books and all that.
Mm,
My flip flop will not be working, keep on breaking, and I have to keep fixing it and all that. But still, at that time also, I was happy. I don't know why I managed to keep it happy. Even I see a beautiful car passing by, and it says, "Wow, nice car." I feel happy for them because
mm,
my parents told me that your job is to do your karma. It's that guy is enjoying car because he did his good karma, and that's why he's
mm,
enjoying it. So you just focus on your karma, keep studying well, and that's only I. So while studying in poverties and miseries and poverties and hardship was not my focus. I never paid attention to it. I just focus on my karmas, good schools. I got my
mm,
PhDs and did successful. Point being is in life, people, lot of youths focus on those fears, greed, and all that. Instead of that, just focus on just keep on doing their karma
mm,
and just enjoy. Heaven and hell is right here, right now. I'm talking to you, I'm in heaven. I mean,
mm,
what better heaven could be when I'm talking to you? And that's an energy and the positive spirit. I always live my life with it. And when I'm
mm,
with people, everybody loves me. I live everybody, everybody lives me. It's a win-win for all. And it's the same. I'm a director at Multi-Faith Coalitions, Peninsula Multi-Faith Coalitions here. And I go to the church and mosque and synagogue. I don't see any difference. I see same great people. And one
mm,
thing to end, I would say that one thing I really, really, truly love Krishna's message is your job is to do your karma without expectations of fruits.
mm,
Doesn't matter whether I am successful or not. Did I do my karma? That's it. Enjoy the life. So
mm,
when I see all those teachings coming from Hinduism, and when I see these other few people get stuck on that judgment day concept, I want to go to heaven, and they get so much stuck on the fruit of their actions, and with
mm,
that so much fear and all that. Uh, no, that philosophy doesn't work for me.
mm. Yeah, like one of the thing is that nowadays we use people to get things and to achieve things. But rather the beauty of it is that what is my dharma in the
Mhm.
karma of this world and my relationship with others.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate bliss. The ultimate bliss is that how can we serve others, not that how can we utilize service as an opportunity to progress and to advance in our own life and to our own enjoyment. So you're
Mhm.
definitely most certainly correct. Otherwise, we just see each other as individuals that are there to utilize each other to achieve our own motivation. So yeah, it's about like anya bilasha to shunyam. It's about that unconditional love and that that we don't try and have selfish desires, but rather we try and cultivate selfless service attitude. And then we try and live our life in such a way. And then when we live our life in such a way, we don't just respect people, but we respect animals and natures and everything.
Yeah, very true.
Beautiful.
I have two more points I want to cover before we close. I am an interfaith marriage consultant, guided so many youths, especially Hindu and Muslims are a majority of my. So, if a Hindu and Muslim they are in love relationships, what and since you have seen both sides of the, what would you recommend to them? Again, being a naive, they don't know that they don't have the theological understanding or time to understand like what you did it. So they are just street people, youths, let's say college kids, 22 years old. They are in love. They love each other. That's clear, Hindu and Muslim. But then what else you will recommend them that, wait, ask those questions, understand what you're getting into it. And let's say Hindu girl is marrying to a Somalian person, and maybe they may move to Somalia, whatever. So what kind of suggestions you will suggest them that?
Once there was a young gentleman, a monk, and this monk was distributing spiritual books. And then what happened is that then he saw this Muslim passing by and tried to stop this Muslim and say to this Muslim, like, hey, look, I've got these spiritual books. Would you like one? And this Muslim individual said that, thank you so much for stopping me, and thank you so much for trying to give me this, but my religion does not permit me to take spiritual books from other religions.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then the monk didn't even know that he was a Muslim, but the monk asked after she said no, that, what religion, what faith do you follow? What religion do you follow? And then this individual said, I follow Islam. And then the monk said, amazing, wow, that's so wonderful. I actually took the time to read the Quran, and I could really appreciate it. It was really nice. And then this Muslim lady became so shocked. She was like, what? Like, you're a monk. You're a monk and you've read the Quran? And in that moment, she felt like, you know what? Because you've taken the time to study my faith, I will take this book and I will take the time to study your faith. So the whole basis of the story is that nowadays what it is that relationship is not a battlefield. It's not a war zone. It's not a place where one person tries to prove right. One person tries and attempts to prove another wrong. A relationship is built on three things, personally, me speaking, which is communication, boundary, and respect. When I speak about relationship, I speak about interfaith relationship. Nowadays, what it is that in the temple, I see so many individuals that often bring their spouse, and their spouse may not even be they may not even believe in the faith, but there's an element of respect. And so when a partner feels respected for their faith, then they respect the other person's faith. But nowadays, what happens is that relationship has become a place where one tries to dominate over the other one. And then what happens is that there's this invisible tick. If you love me, then you will believe in the same thing as I do.
Yeah.
If you respect me, then you will also follow what I follow. And so relationship has become on the basis of what stimulates my senses and what gives me pride and what makes me feel superior, rather than taking the time to understand someone else's faith, someone else's respect, someone else's faith, someone else's religion, and someone else's practice. And so I would say for an interfaith relationship to work, it would have to work on the basis of mutual understanding, which only comes through communication. Let's talk to each other, let's connect to each other, and let's not feel like if you share something that you're wrong, or if I share something, I'm wrong. So relationship only works when there's openness.
Yeah.
When there's openness and where there is a level of spontaneity. That, we're not trying to dictate and control the conversation, but rather we're genuinely inquisitive. We're genuinely interested. There's a saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
So if you care enough, then people will also be interested in you. And so I would say this is important in interfaith relationships, and understanding that ultimately what it is that if you can help empower your partner to become a deeper person in their faith, they will also become a better human beings, and they will also become a better individuals for the relationship, and they will become a better individual should you have a children one day for the children. But if you
Beautiful.
try and treat it like a war zone where there's control, then naturally what happens is within that arises a lot of conflicts, abuse, narcissistic behavior, and so many other issues.
No, beautifully. You have said beautifully. Uh, in more practical terms, the same thing I would say, I tell people not to be submissive. If somebody is trying to
Mm,
dominate, that convert to my faith because mine is only truth, yours is wrong. That's a submission. So don't start a relationship on submission because it's not going to go another. Further, I always
but-
recommend this my book that
mm,
share and respect with equality, like it says here. Yeah.
mm, yeah,
So in any relationship, there must be sharing. If it is Islam and Hinduism, share two faiths.
mm,
Respect each other truly. Go to both the place and raise the children teaching Quran and Bible side and Gita side by side. Take them to one day to mosque, other day to Hindu mandir. And equality. Everything has to be 50-50. Make sure nobody's trying to take it 100%, 0% model.
yeah.
And in practical sense, if you follow that one, that's a true sense. If somebody says, no, I cannot give you equality, it's time to walk away.
Definitely. Like one thing that I've always been doing in my life is taking the time to go to the church, to go to temple, synagogue, different places, and just
Mm,
connecting with people and understanding people. Again, like I said, most problem starts from ignorance.
mm.
So I think also being a supportive partner is so important, like taking the time to visit your partner to the temple or taking the time to visit your partner at the mosque. And I think we need to kind of get into this idea that if I go to a different religion, a religious place, it doesn't mean I'm renouncing my religion.
Correct.
But
Very.
rather, what it is that I'm learning to become a little bit more accepting that there are different people and they may share different belief, different values, different ways of doing things. And if I truly and really love them, then I will try and see and find how we can make things work.
Uh, Ending last statement from you. I want the final summary statement. The question to you is, you were Muslim. Now you are Hindu
Yogi.
following Krishna consciousness. Problem is on many Hindu youths today in West as well as in India. They are they see Hinduism in practice, but they don't understand what's the Hinduism is there, and they see so many problems. Versus when they see Christianity, wow, beautiful church and beautiful pastors, and really they get so impressed by it. They get impressed by Islam, that wow, it's so simple religion and clear message. Like that other guy said, one life and you go to heaven. So,
Mm.
what message you have for Hindu youths who are a little confused about who they are, and what would you tell them?
I would say to Hindu youths, you know, part of the reason of why we become so attracted and captivated by what's going on around us is because we have forgotten the ability to use our own intelligence and to question things. So
Mm,
I would say for many Hindu youths, don't just perform rituals. Rituals may, you know, rituals may make you go places fast, but then you'll also fall faster. But what it is that if you ask questions, then you actually bring about the spiritual element of your practice. So I would say, so it's like, my mentor always says here that you have to add the spirit to the ritual and then you get spiritual. If
mm.
you just remain ritualistic, then eventually you'll disconnect from whatever you're ritualistic to. But if you understand the spirit, you understand the essence, you understand the why, then the how, the what, all that kind of thing takes a secondary place in life. So I would say that don't give away your ability to question things. Always ask questions. And there's no such thing as wrong questions. The only way that you can get better at asking better questions is by asking questions. If you don't ask any questions, then you will always remain naive, you will always remain ignorant, and so therefore you will always be stimulated by all the things that are going on around you. But what it is that with question comes clarity. And with clarity, then we can make better decisions. So I would say that's the most important thing. Why am I doing this? What does this mean? How can I go deeper? How can I enhance? Ask questions. And then as you ask questions, I am sure, because it's happened to me in my life, Krishna will send the right gurus, the right teachers, the right individuals in your life to illuminate your ignorance. And it takes time, it takes patience, but you have to start somewhere.
Great point. Great point. No, it was really, really honor uh, to talk to you. So much enlightening to know you're not out here to criticizing any faith, especially your own faith. At one point, you just are rediscovering. That's about it.
Yeah, like like Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual teacher, says that if we can encourage one to chant on the name of God,
Mm,
whether it's Krishna, Allah, Jehovah, and we can encourage them to do it with purity, with sincerity, then eventually
mm,
they're on their way to God
mm.
consciousness.
Nope, great. Mahimarnava Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Hari Bol.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you